We think of fire as a dangerous tool we learned to master. Today, you turn a knob on a stove and expect heat. But for your ancestors, fire was a living thing they had to catch. If you traveled back nearly 2 million years, you would find creatures that were not quite human carrying burning branches into deep, dark caves. They were not just staying warm. They were starting a revolution that would literally change the shape of our brains. We are the only species on the planet that cooks its food. This single habit is what allowed us to become the dominant species on Earth. But for a long time, we had no idea when this process actually started. Most scientists believed it was a relatively recent development. They thought humans only mastered fire a few 100,000 years ago. New evidence from the bottom of a cave in South Africa has completely broken that assumption. Here is why. Finding the origins of fire is one of the hardest puzzles in history. Ash blows away. Rain washes it out. Wind scatters the evidence of ancient campfires until nothing is left for archaeologists to find. Determining when humans first began using fire has remained one of archaeology's most difficult questions because the evidence is often subtle and difficult to detect. The world nearly 2 million years ago was a terrifying place for a creature that lacked claws or sharp teeth. It was freezing cold, and predators that were much faster and stronger than us ruled the night. Our ancestors had small bodies and relatively small brains compared to us today. They were struggling to survive on the African savanna. They needed an edge. They did not have pharmacies or advanced survival gear. They did not have a way to make fire on demand. They could only wait for it to happen by accident. This created a massive gap in our understanding of human history. We knew fire was important, but we could not prove how long we had been using it. The breakthrough came from an ongoing collaboration of scientists from around the world. They focused their attention on a place called Wonderwork Cave, located in the Kalahari Desert of South Africa. This cave is a massive natural record of human evolution. In 2012, researchers found evidence of fire there dating back 1 million years. At the time, that was considered the oldest known evidence of intentional fire use in the entire world. But the team kept digging. They went deeper into the archaeological layers of the cave floor. They were looking for something that seemed impossible to find. They were looking for the very first time a human ancestor interacted with a flame. They found traces of fire use in archaeological deposits dating from 1.07 to 1.79 million years ago. This discovery pushed back the timeline of fire use by hundreds of thousands of years. It reveals surprisingly sophisticated behavior long before humans could create fire whenever they wanted. You might wonder how scientists can be so sure about fire that burned nearly 2 million years ago. They used a newly developed technique that can detect signs of burning in fossilized bones. This method is based on the light-emitting properties of burned bone. When bones are exposed to intense heating, they produce a distinctive glow when they are hit with specific wavelengths of light. Researchers combined this non-destructive luminescence method with established chemical analyses to identify burned animal bones with a high level of confidence. They tested this method on hundreds of tiny fossil bones left behind by owls that once roosted inside the cave. These owls' remains accumulated naturally over time. They provide a perfect record of past events preserved on the cave floor. The scientists discovered clear evidence of burning within an archaeological layer associated with early stone tools. These tools are known as Acheulean artifacts. They are likely linked to a species called Homo Erectus. The location of these burned remains is the most shocking part of the story. They were found approximately 30 meters inside the cave. This is far beyond the area that could have been affected by natural wildfires. The layer where they were found also lacked guano deposits. This ruled out the possibility of spontaneous combustion from bat droppings. This means early humans were deliberately bringing naturally occurring fire into the cave and keeping it burning. This represents a major behavioral milestone in the history of life. These ancient humans were not simply passive observers of natural fires. They were actively engaging with fire and incorporating it into their lives. They likely collected fire from natural sources like lightning strikes or wildfires on the African savanna. They brought it into the cave on multiple occasions and maintained it for a period before it eventually went out. Fire offered these early humans many life-saving advantages. It provided warmth during the freezing nights of the Pleistocene. It gave them protection from predators that were afraid of the light. It offered light after dark so they could see what was happening around them. But the biggest advantage was the ability to cook food. Cooking food is essentially a form of external digestion. When you cook meat or vegetables, the heat breaks down complex fibers and proteins. This makes the nutrients much easier for your body to absorb. Before cooking, our ancestors had to spend a massive amount of time and energy just chewing and digesting raw food. If you look at the skulls of earlier ancestors like Australopithecus, they have massive jaws and huge teeth. They needed that physical power to process their diet. But as fire became a regular part of life, those physical requirements began to disappear. The shift to a cooked diet had a direct impact on our physical evolution. Our ancestors developed smaller teeth and smaller digestive tracts because they no longer needed to process tough, raw materials. Because cooking made food more efficient, our bodies had a sudden surplus of energy. In nature, every calorie counts. Digestion is an expensive process. By moving part of that process to a campfire, we freed up energy that our bodies could use elsewhere. This energy was funneled directly into the most expensive organ in the human body. It went to the brain. The period between 2 million years ago and 800,000 years ago saw a massive expansion of the human brain. This expansion may have been driven by the need to communicate and hunt prey efficiently in a fluctuating environment. Cooking gave us the high-quality fuel needed to power a larger and more complex mind. This discovery at Wonderwork Cave also suggests that our ancestors were more creative than we gave them credit for. Keeping a fire burning inside a cave for long periods is difficult. You need fuel that lasts. The researchers suggested that these ancient humans might have used owl pellets as fuel. This would explain why the tiny rodent bones contained within those pellets show signs of burning. This shows a level of resourcefulness that is almost modern. They were scanning their environment and finding ways to maintain the technology they had captured from nature. This required constant attention and cooperation. You cannot keep a fire going alone for weeks at a time. Someone has to gather the fuel while someone else watches the flame. This likely strengthened the social bonds of the group. It turned the cave from a temporary shelter into a home. The timeline of human evolution shows that these changes did not happen overnight. It took millions of years for our lineage to move from basic life forms to complex tool users. Life on Earth began nearly 3.9 billion years ago as single-celled organisms. It took until about 665 million years ago for the first animals to appear. Primates only emerged about 66 million years ago after the extinction of the dinosaurs. Our specific lineage split from the ancestors of chimpanzees roughly 7 million years ago. By 2.8 million years ago, the first members of the genus Homo appeared in East Africa. These early humans were already using basic stone tools for scavenging. But it was the mastery of fire by Homo Erectus nearly 1.8 million years ago that truly set us on the path to becoming modern humans. So the next time you see a fire or cook a meal, you are not just looking at a modern convenience. You are looking at a deeply ingrained survival mechanism that is nearly 2 million years old. You are looking at the technology that allowed our ancestors to shrink their guts and grow their brains. It turned a vulnerable primate into the most powerful force on the planet. This discovery at Wonderwork Cave changes how we see ourselves. We are not just a species that uses tools. We are the species that fire built. Our biology and our social structures are hardwired around the warmth of the flame. It makes you wonder what other ancient habits are still controlling our lives today. If fire gave us our brains, what gave us our culture? Why did we suddenly decide to start creating art and music in these same dark caves? Click here to find out why we started making the first figurines and what they tell us about the human soul.